Quinn's Ideas is a very respected YouTube channel, and he's been a big proponent of Denis Villeneuve's Dune. But if you know some of Quinn's works, he's very critical of the David Lynch version. He praises the sci-fi version a lot, and for whatever reason seems to have a real issue with the Jodorowsky version of Dune. And that's fine. Dune fans will differ on which versions they like, which adaptations are stronger, weaker, what books they like, what books they don't like. But this is a little few months old, but I did find this video a little bit annoying because I do find this consistent thread where when it comes to kind of experimental or very highly artistic science fiction, I think it's mostly irrational. He doesn't provide good reasons why he's so biased against it. He just doesn't like it. So the main topic of the video was that he felt really angry that Jodorowsky spoke up against Denis Villeneuve's Dune, calling it much too plain and bland, too predictable. And he wished that Jodorowsky would just shut up because, well, at least Denis Villeneuve has finished his version, and it's a very spectacular vision of Dune, whereas Jodorowsky's Dune and how he attempted to do it was probably never going to be realized. I'm partly in agreement, but I just want to let him speak for himself, and then I'll react to how he's framing the issue, because I'm a big fan of Jodorowsky, but I agree he's a very difficult case. So let's hear Quinn speak, and then we'll...
And I felt the need to talk about this. So, former Dune director criticizes 2020 movie trailer as too predictable. I wish his Dune would be a great success because Denis Villeneuve is a nice director about whom I have been told a lot of good things. But you haven't seen any of his movies? I mean, Denis Villeneuve literally just got an award last year for like the greatest director of like the decade. So, I mean, that's kind of shady that like you're like criticizing his movie and you don't even know about his work. You've only heard about it. That's almost like trying to adapt a book you've never read into a 20-hour-long acid trip. Almost. Just almost. So he goes on to say, I saw the trailer. It's very well done. We can see that it is industrial cinema, that there is a lot of money, that it was very expensive. But if it was very expensive, it must pay in proportion. And that is the problem. There is no surprises. The form is identical to what is done everywhere. The lighting, the acting, everything is predictable. So that is what Jodorowsky has to say about the Dune trailer, which is, of course, complete BS. Of course, it's predictable to Jodorowsky. Jodorowsky wanted to take Dune, a story about a human boy who becomes viewed as a god, and terrible things happen because of this, and there's immense fallout. People die, people suffer immensely. It causes tremendous strain on the whole of humanity. He took that story and turned it into a story about a magical boy who was born immaculately from a drop of blood and then dies, possesses everyone, and then becomes a planet, and then that planet becomes sentient, flies through the universe, and then inspires and awakens all the other planets. The universe is... So yeah, of course it's predictable to you, Jodorowsky, because you had no intention of adapting Frank Herbert's story.
Well, okay, so let's try to work through what Jodorowsky is claiming. And I want to just preface that we don't even know how to pronounce his name because I assumed he was Hispanic, but actually I think he's Russian and Jewish. And I'm actually learning Russian, so for the purpose of this review, I'm going to call him Jodorowsky, but I think it's Jodorowsky technically, but there we are. Well, Jodorowsky's Dune is a very famous, rumored project. It is real, they were planning it, but it was sort of stalled in the planning stages. It's an enormous, insane production. I'm not even going to do a summation here. I'll do an entire video on it. It's legendary because so many people who worked on just the beginning stages of that project went on to do incredible work, such as H.R. Geiger, who later did the designs for Alien and the infamous Xenomorph, who, like many people, I'm in complete awe of that design. So the project is big, massive, legendary, but it never got made. And Quinn is partly right that Jodorowsky did not technically want to do Dune, the book, and as he admits rather frontally that he had not read Dune, but a friend of his did, and that friend thought it was fantastic. And the more and more you try to read through and research what he planned to do, it does have a lot of elements of Dune, but really clearly he just wanted to take key aspects and concepts, Dune just as raw material for his artistic vision. But what I find frustrating is that, yes, as a Dune fan, then you could be very nervous what Jodorowsky was up to. That's fine, that's totally legitimate, that he wants an actual faithful adaptation. Now, I would question that. I don't think Denis Villeneuve is doing that either. I think he's doing his own thing, but we'll differ on that. But I am kind of questioning where he's coming from, that he just thinks it was a bad idea, period. Why? And the closest he gets to is, well, this is a big project. It does need a lot of big money, and Jodorowsky was not being practical enough to do it within the studio system. Again, from a certain angle, Dune is incredible. I have no doubt about that. And I think in a couple of weeks I'm going to be joining the chorus of praising it at a very high level. However, I do see Jodorowsky's point that a lot of elements are kind of plain and bland and nothing revolutionary or shocking, right? There's things we've seen before. They're done very well, but we have seen them, right? Just to take one small thing, which he doesn't even comment on, I'm talking about Quinn, is the style of acting. It's naturalistic and, quote, method acting. Basically, the actors try to be the characters as much as possible, and they do a good job of it, but there's no room for spontaneity, no room for experimentation, nothing that would really challenge the audience in terms of what the performance would be. They're there to perform the characters. I'm sure most Dune fans want that. I, as a Dune fan, would want that as well, but I am aware, as a filmmaker who's trying to do his own work, and as an artist and as a writer, that's just one style of doing acting. It's not the only style. The reason it's the dominant style is because that's what most consumers and moviegoers want, but that's not the only option you have as a filmmaker. I have no problem that Quinn doesn't like Jodorowsky's work or doesn't want his version of Dune. That's fine. I do. I appreciate what Jodorowsky was up to. What I find frustrating is that Quinn just doesn't explain why he thinks, quote, artistic or experimental sci-fi is bad. It just doesn't seem to like it. It's not his thing. He wants something that's much more plain, much more understandable, much more conventional narrative. And that's fine, but that's just a preference. It doesn't tell me that this more artistic and experimental sci-fi is worse. But at the same time, I'm not saying just be a fanaticist. I can clearly see that artistic style can go wrong. Kubrick, Jodorowsky, Hitchcock, the great artistic directors can make bad movies. Just to take one example, 2001 is widely praised as this incredible path-breaking science fiction, blah, blah, blah. But the more I look at it, it just feels like it has some interesting moments, but overall, I'm not very impressed by it. And I'm really shocked that people praise it so highly. But I do respect what Kubrick was up to. But I have to be honest, if I have to sit through two things, either the actual 2001 again or a documentary on the making of Dune by Jodorowsky, I'd honestly look at the documentary first. I just think that's much more interesting. It really would inspire me to have interesting, great ideas than the 2001 by Kubrick. So again, artistic sci-fi is also not necessarily by default better. It can also be very, very bad. It just frustrates me. And it's not just Quinn, but a lot of these YouTubers just automatically denounce Lynch or Jodorowsky because they don't want to do their version of Dune. They want to do a much more plain, simple version, 1, 2, 3 version of Dune. And I would think Dune of all books is the one that kind of invites you to be much more experimental and artistic. Maybe Jodorowsky would have been a disaster. We don't know. But I would wish commentators, if they're going to be so hostile, would provide at least somewhat better reasoning than this, than why Jodorowsky's Dune not being made was such a good thing, and that we have instead the Denis Villeneuve version. I'm sort of the person, I think we have already 3 interesting versions. I don't see why adding Jodorowsky's version would be a bad thing for us. I really don't. But that's me. Thanks for listening.